Hello and welcome to Elisabeth Hogarth Designs. Before I show you the latest craft room, this was my original craft room that I had up in the eaves, which I put together when my children were at university. But life changes, children move back home and you have to give up prime spaces. I miss the light, I miss the storage opportunities in this room. I love this cutting table and where I have my die cutting machines as well. These are the paper units that you'll see again, and the reason that I'm showing you the older videos, this is craft room number 2, which was part of one of the older bedrooms. And again, you'll see the same Kallax style units and the paper, but the purpose of today's videos is to show you that you may have to adapt your storage spaces and storage solutions, but I wanted to show you some of the things that still work for me. So even though I have downsized and got rid of a considerable amount of craft items, I've still got the core ideas of a craft room which I'm lucky enough to maintain and to work in, and that really helps me when I'm coming to create. So without further ado, I'm going to lead you into my smallest craft room, the craft room that I started with and that I have now returned to, and you'll see that it's a much smaller space. I'm down to one desk, and I've had to film in the portrait because of the size of the space. So you'll see the Kallax style units, and the white units fit nicely onto the top. There is all of my paper stored in my dad's old units that I've repurposed. They must be about 40 years old now, those units, but I'm still making them work for me. And you can see just how much I've had to downsize and be flexible with the way that I store my items. I'm still making good use of the white Hobbycraft trolleys. I've got my Sizzix Big Shot Plus on top of one of the boards, and then as you come down here I've got a big supply of PVA glues. You may remember I did a video some time ago while I was trialling them out, and then here we've got some of my mixed media like my gold flakes, a lot of Sizzix items here that I work with, and this has been slimmed down to the must-have items. I then move this trolley across to the side of my work desk for when I'm filming and for when I want to use it for die cutting and embossing and for my better press. These pen holders used to sit on the side of the trolleys, but I found it more efficient use of space to pop them all into the top. So I've still got my pencils and pens stored safely. I've got another table with my mail machine on, and then here at the bottom I store all of my tapes. This trolley is devoted to my card making supplies, so I've got 2 trays with the storage of them, and then on the top I have a selection of each one of the card sizes, from the craft card to the 7x7s and 8x8s and all of the shape card varieties. The bonus of the trolleys is that you can move them out of the way when you need to get to the units. So again, I have trimmed down my stamp supplies, so I'm down to 3 of these smaller units. So these are the clear trays that people use in their fridges for storing drinks, but I like them because they hold the A5 and the A6 stamps. I categorise the stamps into female, male, children, Christmas text and Christmas backgrounds, and it's a system that I've used now for about 4 or 5 years and it still works for me. I do get rid of stamps that I'm not using frequently. I've got another tray here with animals and birds and butterflies. And then my third box includes my text sentiments. And then at the back I've got the Craft Consortium stamps that I still use. This is the bigger fridge box with the larger A5 stamps in. So I've got my Cat King Crafts and my paper doll, Prima paper doll stamps in pockets. And then at the back I've got the larger mixed media stamps. I've then got one of the fridge boxes that used to be for dies, now stores my Better Press projects, and again I'm using the same system where I take them out the plastic packaging, and then I use the same size wallets because this helps me keep everything uniform. In the same box at the back I've got the Spellbinders glimmer plates, and I find that by storing them in this way I can easily keep track of what I'm using and what I'm buying. I still use magazine racks for the larger stamps, so these are A4 plastic pockets, and these store my magazine and my All and Create stamps. And then here at the front I've got a separate box where I keep my scalpel tools. So I've got the throwaway box and everything is securely in place. Believe it or not, I now only have one box for my dies. I did a big splurge. I had some Craft Bounty box sales and I really honed in on the dies that I use. So I've got the basic shapes, I've got the slimline dies, and then moving through I've got categories like tags and frames, I've got fancy frames, and then as you move down to the back I've got the edges and the text and fonts. And then I move through to the florals. Then I have things like people and occasions. And then I've got a couple of DT sets here. So I've got the Kanban Crafts and the Craft Consortium sets that I still use when I'm making samples for them. I've got another magazine box where I keep the larger A4 collections of dies, and you can see I have really simplified down my collection. I've moved the remainder of my graphic 45 papers into a wooden unit. I do use magazine or document sliders to name these, but I need to redo them because I've moved the papers around. I've got my Stamperia 12x12s here as well. So these are all my precious speciality papers. And then in the corner I'm still using the girls' heat tool. So this was for their hair dryers and GHDs, but I like using this because you can put it in there even when the tools are hot. I've got a couple of boxes for my glue, sticks and wet wipes. And then moving down I've got a makeshift box where I've used removable tapes to make a grid, and within each grid I hold my foil rolls for my glimmer machine, and then to hold them securely in place I use a mini peg. Behind the glimmer foils I've got a smaller box of stencils, and again these are stored in categories. And then I've got my embossing folders that are stored in 3D and the larger style. I used to use this letter rack for storing some of my cards, but I have now commandeered it to store my clear stamp blocks. The tool for the stamping platform fits nicely on the side as well. I've got my Better Press inks in one of my older Distress ink silver boxes, so I've amalgamated these into two. And this used to be a paper storage unit, but now I use it for my inks, and I find this a much better way of saving them because you can pull out the drawers. It's from IKEA. I'll try and find you the details and leave them below, but it works for the oxides, and I also use it for the versifying clairs. I've still got the ink daubers. I'll show you a way of storing the ink daubers later on, but I was limited for space, but I keep one stamping platform. I sold on my Tim Holtz ones, and I've limited myself to just one now. And then I've got my versifying clairs, and then next door I've got two units where I keep my Craft Consortium papers. So I store them in magazine racks. So this is the ink drop set, and then I've got my essentials, and then I've got my spares and my scraps on the side. And then I've got next door, I store my collections. So the 12 by 12 papers go here, and then I store the embellishments separately. I found a good hack for storing my rulers. So I use metal rings, and most rulers have a hole in them. So instead of lying them flat, I hang them all using the rings. And I still store my tapes, the larger tape rolls, on pieces of string hung from a hook. I've got a clear box. Clear boxes work really well for me because it makes me keep things neat. That blue box there stores my Craft Consortium products, and then here are my rolls of twine and Hessian ribbon. These are my mum's old stamp blocks, which is where it all began for her. These two boxes are one of the very few times that I've bought actual storage solutions. So I've swapped out the pens now. I sold a whole load of the ink lilies because my daughter gave me a new set of pens. So I had to give up the ink lilies to store those. And then here in these old wine boxes, I keep my handmade cards. Most of my cards and samples get sent to the companies, but I do keep my everyday handmade cards to send out to friends and family. And then here I still store my sentiments, my black and white sentiments from Clarity and Tim Holtz. And then this small block here is where I have whittled down my tools. So I've got the bare essentials, I've got the tonic magnet folder, which is very handy when you're working, and then I've got a couple of trimmers. I've still got my Sizzix big shots, and then in more clear storage boxes I'm keeping some older paints and leads. I had to be pretty ruthless with my mixed media supply, so I've now got one box for flowers, for sisal, and then I've got one box of wooden tags and wooden embellishments. Then I store my die cut A4 papers and templates vertically. The pink folder holds my peelables, so these are DT sets, and again I've whittled those down. And then finally I've got two boxes where I keep some of my larger DT projects and my labels and stationery. So moving up to the top, this is one of the smaller units that my dad made, and here I keep my 6x6 papers, and then still this works for me. I keep my hobby craft papers and my black card vertically. I've got a small space for my glimmer machine and my Better Press, and then again I'm using the fridge boxes to store smaller pieces of cards and a gold card. These are all of my glitter cards and vellums, and again the A4 card is stored in rainbow order, and then this box here stores all of my Craft Consortium coloured paper that I use for projects. This is my stack of white card and art paper. And then this is the larger box where I used to keep candy, and again I've had to let quite a lot of that go, and I've replaced it with my sequins in rainbow order because I decided I use far more sequins than I do candy. I've got my wallets of Craft Consortium embellishments, and then here it still works for me, the clear units holding my washi tapes and my embossing powders. So some things I've just moved from one place to another because for me they still work. I've got my nail box where I keep all of my inks and stickles, and then again I've got another fridge box where I keep my pink ink drop inks, and then I use the Lazy Susan for my brushes, and then at the top there, because I use it less, I've got my scan and cut. And then moving across to the top, I'll do the front row first. I've got some Graphic 45 projects because I was able to keep those. I didn't have to send them to them as samples. And then I keep my larger clips and my threads and my button jar and more of my favourite samples in a space at the front. And then at the back you can see I've got the sweetie jars. They are made of plastic, but they are really good for storing my ribbon supplies. Again, all in colour order. So you can see I'm down to one large desk to work on, so I keep all of my recording in one place now. I've had to be clever with phone clamps and lighting because I really do depend on them. And here is another Lazy Susan with my basic everyday tools. Again, it's clear so that I can see everything easily. I like to be able to have my scissors and glues on hand, and I keep my precision glue gun on my desk now so that it's ready to use straight away. Then above my desk I've got a pegboard with my latest cards on. So now I want to show you some of the solutions that I still think work really well. So these are from my older videos. And first up, I'm resharing my swatch cards. So I used these when I was trialling out the 3D embossing folders, and it's a reminder of all of the different ways and all the different products that you can use. So if you're stuck for Mojo, firstly, you can just make swatch cards as a way of playing with your product, and also you can refer back to them for inspiration on how to restart a project. Another great way to store your papers, once you've cut into the 12 by 12, rather than leaving them, I cut them down to 6 by 6 so that I've got ready-made card backgrounds. I do categorise them again, it's the way that my brain works, but I do find that I use far more of the papers if I have them out in the open rather than using them in plastic wallets. These are the original plastic egg boxes that I used to use for my daubers. Because I'm limited to space, I've had to give these up. And I do use the daubers less now, but I would highly recommend buying yourself a cheap plastic egg box to store these inky daubers in. And here's another practical way to store your machine leads. So I save my toilet rolls and then I put them inside the toilet roll with a piece of washi tape, and that also goes onto the machine that I'm using. So for instance, I've put a piece of white and gold washi tape on the back of my scan and cut machine, and then I can easily match them up when I want to use them. It really doesn't matter on the size of your craft room or the amount of supplies that you have, but if you think creatively and use everyday items that you have around you at minimal expense, you've got a great way of keeping your products and using them rather than keeping them in boxes and not being able to find what you want. If you have enjoyed today's videos, please comment below, and I look forward to welcoming you back to Elisabeth Hogarth Designs very soon. Take care. Bye bye for now.